Hi guys, welcome back to Brew and Build. This week I've got a beer that I'm going to call a Molasses Stout. Now it's a very similar recipe to the West Indies Porter I did a couple of months ago that you may or may not have seen. Now it's not by mistake that it's quite similar, in fact it's quite on purpose, because in that West Indies Porter, the amount of molasses that was in it was really quite small, but what I felt it contributed was quite strong in molasses taste, considering there was only 40 grams of molasses in it. So what I've done is I've constructed a very similar recipe where I've increased the molasses in this, but I've decreased the dark crystal, which I think was very much emphasizing molasses taste in it. And I've also changed the yeast out on this as well. So what I'll do is I'll flip over the page here. I'll run you through basically the two recipes. On one side, I've got the original West Indies Porter. It had 3,600 grams of pale malt in it. I've now got 3,300 grams of pale malt in this one. I had 400 grams of roast barley in the original. I've still got 400 grams of roast barley in this one. Same as flake barley, I had 300 grams and I've got 300 grams in this. Where we start to depart a bit more is in the crystal malts. So the West Indies Porter had 100 grams of dark crystal and 100 grams of extra dark crystal. This new one, the Stout, I've got 250 grams of crystal malt 20L. So a very light crystal malt, and instead of giving caramel type flavors or burnt sugars or toffee or anything like that, the 20L really should just give sweet, should give sugariness. There'll be very little actual caramel to it, and that's the plan. So that hopefully will isolate the molasses in it a bit more. To keep the drinkability in this, what I've got is 250 grams of white sugar, whereas in the original, in the West Indies Porter, I had 200 grams of white sugar. As I've already said, in this second beer, I've got now double the amount of blackstrap molasses as I had. So I've got 80 grams of blackstrap molasses in this, whereas in the West Indies Porter I only use 40 grams of blackstrap molasses. The rest of the recipe is the same on both. So both of them, 25 grams of Northern Brewer at 60 minutes, 20 grams of Target at 60 minutes. No change on there. Both water profiles, the same. They're just a light water profile, but they are quite malt forward in their chloride to sulfate ratio. So no change on that either. The next difference I've made is the West Indies Porter, I used US 05 yeast. Now, okay, at the time I had to use that because my preferred yeast at the time failed, but actually that West Indies Porter worked really well with that US 05. In this one, I have used the yeast that I was going to use, and that is White Lab 028. It's their Edinburgh Ale yeast. So that also will present small differences to the beer. So that's essentially the breakdown of the recipe. I'll quickly do some brew footage of the brew day so you can see how that went. Come back, open this up and see what it's like. I'm down to the last 10 minutes or so of the boil here, so I need to get the sugar and the molasses in. This takes a little bit of time, but it's worth it. You just need to liquefy and dissolve the sugar so that when you put it in, it doesn't end up in a big lump in the bottom of the tank and burning to the elements. And I'll do the same with the molasses as well, just to liquefy it a bit more. Okay, that's the sugar done. Now do the molasses. Okay, so that's finally the end of the brew day. I think it went a bit better. I didn't manage to drop anything non-sanitary into the kettle, so that's good. I've tasted the starter. The starter tastes really good. So hopefully I can get to use the yeast that I want to this time. So I'll finish transferring this, get some oxygen in it, get the yeast in it, and then I'll pop it out on the heat mat. I'll get this fermenting at about 18 degrees Celsius. And hopefully in a couple of weeks we'll get a result and find out how we did. Okay, now for the good bit where I get to drink it. So let's open it up. Right, so it pours well. It does get a good head on it. What I've noticed over the time drinking this is the head doesn't last as long as the original West Indies Porter. It does tend to drop relatively quickly, which I'm fairly surprised, actually, given the amount of flaked barley in it. But it does get a good head, and it does stay around for a little bit of time. So, smell wise, it smells like a stout, so that's good. You can smell the roast barley, and you can make out the blackstrap molasses in there. Definitely there. Although it is a little faint. I would have said the blackstrap molasses was stronger in smell in the West Indies Porter. So once again, I think that's the crystal malt, the dark crystals, probably emphasizing that molasses smell to it a bit. Right. So, no doubt about it, it's a porter. The first thing that really comes through to you is that deep roasted barley. Lovely, really smooth, really dark flavour. Leaves you reasonably dry, which, considering it's a malty water profile, it does actually leave your mouth sort of lightly dry, which is quite nice. It makes you want to take another sip, actually. So, chocolate, quite espresso, actually. It's I would say that's more really dark espresso than the West Indies Porter. The differences here I'm getting with this and the original one, I'm not left with anything particularly sweet. on this. What I'm left with is, if you can imagine, imagine drinking yourself a reasonably sort of sweet, strong, really strong espresso coffee, and the aftertaste you're left with from an espresso is just that really dark grain, dark bean, dark coffee, dryness, slightly bitter, but as long as it's a sweet espresso, it's just got that light sugariness just to offset the really dark, slightly bitter beans of the coffee. And that's exactly what you're left with this beer. The molasses, I don't find as prominent in this. It's there, there's no doubt about it. If you go looking for it, it doesn't hit you in the face by any means, but if you're looking for it, molasses is there. My wife picks it up quite strongly, actually. I think she's a little more sensitive to the molasses taste, and she picks it up reasonably strongly, and has done right the way through the aging process of this. I'm not picking it up as much. I have to kind of search for that molasses flavour a little bit in it, but it is there, no doubt about it. The other thing that is quite different between this and the West Indies Porter that I did is the yeast, and it's really, really noticeable between the two. This is extremely smooth. It's a beautiful, smooth stout, this one, whereas the West Indies Porter is slightly sharper. And it's because of the yeast. So the Scottish ale yeast in this is smoothing it right out. Whereas the US 05 gave it that American pale ale crispness to the beer, which worked really well in that West Indies Porter, because those burnt sugars were really rich. And it offset the molasses, and it made a really rich beer. It was really nice having that crisp yeast just to sharpen it up that little bit. Whereas this being less caramelly sweet, less lingeringly sweet, it's really nice having the Scottish ale yeast just to smooth it right the way through. I think if I used US 05 in this, I think this would be a little bit sharp, and it would contrast with the dark grains a little bit now, and it would probably be a little bit, I think, lacking in, not in taste so much, but in mouthfeel is probably where I think it would lack. This really smooths out the roast barley grains for me. I think this is a nice beer. Personally, I think the West Indies Porter probably tips the scales for me, but I do really like this beer. It's just that they are very different, which is quite remarkable when you look at the similarity of the grain bill. The difference between the two beers is, honestly, it's chalk and cheese. So I hope you've got something out of this. I hope I haven't just rambled on ridiculously, which I may have. I'm going to finish the rest of this beer. So as usual, till next time, life's good. Drink more beer.